Welcome to today's POC Group webinar. I am glad that you are all here. The topic of today's webinar is ArchiMate in Practice, Experience Digital Transformation. Here are a few tips that will allow you to follow the webinar effectively. During the webinar, all participants are welcome to ask questions. We will do our best to answer them at the end of the webinar. Please use the side panel of the webinar application found on the right side of your screen. Depending on the time remaining at the end, we will select one or two questions and answer them live. For any questions that remain unanswered, we will be sure to answer them via email after the webinar. As a participant of this webinar, your name and email are, of course, anonymous to other participants. My name is Leire Vidal, and I am your host today. As an expert on the topic, I would like to greet my dear colleague Tom Brennan, who will lead you through the content-related part of our webinar. Today, Tom will give us insights about how the organizational architecture can be modeled across all layers of the architecture, which of the ArchiMate concepts should be used for mapping the organizational architecture, and how the architecture can be used to support the implementation of a digital corporate strategy. Before we get started, I'd like to give you a brief overview of the activities of the VOC Group. The VOC Group was founded in 1995 as a spin-off of the University of Vienna, and today has more than 230 employees in 8 countries. We sell our products, implementation projects, and consulting services in more than 50 countries, building on with the support of a strong partner network. We are particularly proud that nearly 100,000 users of our free community editions have registered worldwide. With this experience of more than 20 years in IT-based management domains, we now have more than 35,000 installations of our commercial software products in companies around the world. Our products from the VOC Management Office are primarily aimed at facilitating changes in business and IT. We accomplish this by creating the necessary visibility into your process architecture or enterprise architecture that helps you better understand and control change. The portfolio of our products includes the well-known Adonis for business process management, analysis and optimization, ADO-IT for IT management and enterprise architecture, and GRC for governance, risk and compliance. All of these products embrace a powerful common platform that allows users to model processes or architectures, run analytics and reports, assess risks, and more, through a web-based approach. This platform is characterized by very high flexibility in the configuration, also allowing the implementation of very specific customer requirements through customizing. Our international customers, as well as renowned analysts such as Forrester and Gartner, have become increasingly aware of us in recent years and are a positive testimony to our development and future plans. We are particularly proud of our results in the Forrester Wave for Enterprise Architecture Management Suites. From this study, we emerge as a global leader with our EA suite, ADO-IT. Take a few minutes and browse through the respective reviews and reports on our website. Tom Brennan is already prepared and will guide you through the topic ArchiMate in Practice, Experience Digital Transformation.
Okay, thank you, Leire, for the introduction to today's webinar. To take a practical look at the ArchiMate framework. I'd also like to welcome everyone for joining today from my side here in Dublin. We're very excited to have recently announced the release of ADO-IT 8.5, And in today's short webinar session, we'll be focusing on how we can apply the implementation of ArchiMate in the latest release of AdoIT, and we will see how we can use the framework using a simple digital transformation kind of demonstration example. So what can you expect from today's webinar? The agenda is pretty straightforward. I'm going to firstly discuss our procedure model for digital transformation and the various steps you must take, and also the types of questions you have to consider at each step along the way. I'll then introduce ArchiMate, and we can look at a more practical or a proposed subset of ArchiMate that you can use within AdoIT. AdoIT, the latest release, supports the full ArchiMate standard and framework, but it's typically necessary to configure or reduce the number of artifacts and relations that you would like to use for the standard, which is also supported in AdoIT, as you can easily configure the metamodel in the administration toolkit depending on the goals and the stakeholders involved in your EA initiative. So we'll then look directly in the tool how AdoIT and ArchiMate can support your digital transformation journey by taking a look at a small case study example related to a ski resort that is undergoing some change and some digital transformation opportunities. So let's start off with looking at our procedure model for digital transformation. So as we know, digital transformation means change, so it could be the case of changing your service offering or using a new sales channel or trying to develop more efficient business processes. But as we are all aware in this day and age, if we make a change to any of our maybe business processes, it's going to have a knock-on effect to our applications and our organizational structure, and therefore the entire kind of organization as a whole really feels the change and has to be ready for the change. So yeah, you really must make sure that the communication is good, so that your organization is ready, but also that your architecture is in a good place to see what impacts the change is going to have. So if we just look at the steps here, it could be the case of there's a new technology trend available in the market and everybody's raving about it, but there could be many questions that your organization must answer before you can simply introduce the next best thing. So before doing so, you have to understand the current state of your architecture. You want to document the as-is state to understand all of the various kind of relationships and dependencies that exist currently. But once you have a stable as-is state documented, you can then begin to see and kind of analyze what new trends, technologies are available to the market, and then to take a step back, and then you really got to question whether or not your organization really is going to depend on this new technology, and then decide which ones are right for your organization by analyzing their digitalization potential. And there should really be some kind of value associated with making the change for either one of your stakeholder groups, or the change could be addressing some of the stakeholder concerns that have been kind of communicated to you as the EA responsible. So we then need to look for potential solution ideas in the form of our to-be architecture. So after kind of analyzing the potential, we need to see what changes we can make, and we can analyze what current assets and artifacts in your architecture are going to be impacted as a result of the proposed transformation. And then if you do decide to go ahead and implement the idea, you have to be able to define the kind of projects and initiatives to do so. Step 4 then is kind of focusing on what legal regulations could have an impact. So especially with now the introduction of GDPR, how's that going to affect the privacy of the data that's involved in the proposed solutions or any introduced technology. So the final step of our procedure model then is really to begin the rollout of the to-be architecture and just making sure that the organization is prepared and ready for the change. It could be the case that you need to firstly communicate to make people aware, but also you need to know based on what's being changed, if it's new technology, if it's new application, if it's a change to the process. You could need some new user training, for example, to make sure that the people are aware and ready to work with any new system that's being introduced. So again, as I said, communication here is key, but also trying to make sure that you have all of the involved stakeholders buy-in to really kind of have the willingness to buy into the impending changes. So again, communication here is really important. So one of our on-demand webinars takes you through this whole procedure model in more detail. It's available on our website. There you can see the link on the top right corner of the slide. Okay, so looking then to ArchiMate. So we're looking more so about ArchiMate in practice. As you know, ArchiMate is a specification from the Open Group. It's a standard, it's open, it's independent. It allows you to describe and analyze and visualize the relationships among the various business domains in an unambiguous way. So we're trying to have, they've introduced concepts and relations and dependencies in a language that everybody should be able to understand once you are aware of how ArchiMate works. And that then we can see here that the comprehensive framework provides a lot of artifacts and relations, but in addition to the core framework, which provides you with a number of architecture layers and various aspects to support the definition and the description of your EA domains, ArchiMate also provides additional layers which allows you to define your strategy and motivation, as well as the physical elements like any facilities or equipments or materials that are used throughout your organization as well. So it really is quite a comprehensive framework in terms of modeling your whole organization, right from the strategic level down into the physical buildings and equipment and materials that are used across the organization. So also it's quite heavily aligned to TOGAF, so the relation to TOGAF is quite definitive, as each layer of the ArchiMate framework maps and also matches very well to the TOGAF ADM cycle, and the color-coded artifacts relate to each phase of the ADM, right from the strategy and motivation down through each phase and each layer of business application technology, right through to the implementation and migration phases as well. So the modeling language and semantics of ArchiMate is very specific, but the three aspects provided in the framework was basically inspired by our own kind of natural language, where a sentence has to have a subject, which is the active structure in ArchiMate, so the active structure being either the business actor or the stakeholder or the application who's actually doing something. A verb then is like our behavior within ArchiMate, so the behavior is used to associate processes or functions where something's actually happening, and then an object, which in ArchiMate is the kind of passive structure, which is basically your data, which is there but it doesn't actually perform any behavior. So we've got the active structure, the behavior, as well as the passive structure. So that's how each kind of concept is built up with those three concepts, adding to a similar sentence like man kicks ball would be something similar to an application providing a process using some data, for example. So this structure within ArchiMate and what is being presented in the model is quite clear once you understand the concepts. The different shapes in ArchiMate also help you to understand that structural elements, for example, are denoted using square corners, and then behavior elements are denoted with some round corners, as you can see on the slide. So you can see the differentiation here just in the actual structure of the icons, indicating what they represent. But as you can see, there's quite a number of concepts, and there's also a lot of relations and dependency options to kind of understand and get your head around, especially when you start out on the journey using ArchiMate. But the label of the relation signifies the role of the source element in the relationship. So for example, when we say an application service serves a business process, and we can see based on the direction of the arrow so that we can read it like that. But most important questions for all kind of new users who are trying to adopt the whole kind of ArchiMate standard is which concepts are really relevant for my architecture initiative. So this is really the kind of important point. It's a really comprehensive framework with lots of objects and lots of options and lots of concepts and relations. But the success of any kind of architecture initiative is going to depend on the adoption of whatever modeling approach you take, and you don't want to kind of overwhelm your stakeholders with too many objects and too many relations, especially at the beginning as you're starting out. So just looking then in AutoIT, so what does a practical metamodel look like? Here, as I said, AutoIT supports the full ArchiMate standard, but based on our years of kind of modeling experience and with our own AutoIT standard metamodel, we've created just here kind of a mirror image of our standard metamodel using ArchiMate, which could be a good starting point and introduction to the kind of standard as a whole. So our metamodel still covers the core layers and aspects of the full ArchiMate framework and provides support for a wide variety of stakeholders who have different concerns related to the different parts of the architecture. For example, you could have a business analyst who may be trying to just analyze the business architecture layer, focusing on the business process performance of an organizational unit maybe, and trying to see what applications are serving the business processes and potentially causing some performance issues. Or it may be a technology owner who who's responsible for some of the system software, but he knows that some of the system software is soon to be decommissioned, so he wants to find out what the impact will be on the application architecture layer, for example. Or it could be another stakeholder such as the enterprise architect who needs to present some views or viewpoints to the management board on maybe the ongoing projects that are trying to deliver on the strategic drivers that were defined at the beginning of the year. So again, all of the role-based access support is supported in AutoIT, but again, you just got to look at the metamodel and especially the ArchiMate framework as a whole to see which stakeholders you're trying to actually support and what their needs and concerns are, because it's quite a comprehensive framework, so you need to kind of tailor it to your own needs. But as I said, ArchiMate support is available in AutoIT 8.5, which was recently released, and we'll be hosting a webinar with a more in-depth look at what's new in the latest release of AutoIT 8.5 on the 11th of October, called AutoIT 8.5 Unboxed. And yeah, you can already register for that upcoming webinar directly on our website with the link there, but I think Lara will talk to you a little bit more about that at the end. So just moving on then, I want to introduce today's sample case study, which we will use directly in the tool and see how we can model this to see what we have from ArchiMate. But the sample case study we're going to use is about a ski resort that's struggling for numbers at off-peak times. The resort is full at weekends and during the holidays, but outside of the peak periods there's a low occupancy rate, which they obviously want to improve. So similar to the kind of airline and hotel industry, the management of the ski area believe that introducing a new dynamic scenario-based pricing model will be an opportunity to try and increase the usage of their ski area, and yeah, to drive more business by trying to attract more people to go skiing during the off-peak times. So as a project manager, I'm responsible for the dynamic pricing project in the ski resort, and I need to develop a transformation architecture based on their current as-is EA, which has already been modeled by the EA team. So as I said before, as we know now, that the plan is to introduce a new business capability called dynamic pricing, which we need to document and introduce, and we also need to see how the architecture is going to change to support the introduction of a new capability at the ski resort. Okay, so now I'm going to just jump into AutoIT and take you through this example from our ski resort. Once I can log in, hopefully I don't. So yeah, the look and feel of AutoIT hasn't changed so much in 8.5 if you're already familiar with previous versions. So again, we've got our two scenarios here that my architect user has access to. So we've got design and document and govern and manage, but we're going to use design and documents for today. So it's a similar look and feel. We've got lots of quick links here on the left hand side, but being ArchiMate with lots of more elements, we've got some more quick links here that you might be familiar with from before. And on the right hand side again, we've got our my architecture elements. So my user is responsible for these various application components and capabilities, and we can also now indicate a RACI view as well, so who's responsible, accountable, who needs to be consulted and who needs to be informed of any changes to any of our objects here. So that's just something new that you'll see in an upcoming webinar. But now just to look at our ski example. So we've got some models here created related to our fictional ski resort. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at our current as-is architecture around dynamic pricing and see what we have at the moment. So we can, just once the model opens up, I'm just running an instance here on my local machine. So here we can see the various layers of our architecture. If we just focus in on the business architecture layer, first of all, we can see we have some processes. So we've got some processes to buy our lift tickets, but currently we know we don't have an online capability here to sell our tickets, and our equipment reservation is also an in-resort process where the customers can rent their skis and their boots and so on for the duration of their stay on the mountain. Here at the business layer we also have some business objects, so our processes are accessing some information about ticket prices and also some information around our customers to do with their sales, ticket purchases, as well as their equipment rental. At the application layer, so we've got our we have a ski lift ERP application that's currently composed of two other application components. So we've got our customer management and equipment management application components, which are serving the processes that we have at the business layer. And then the third layer that we want to look at just right now is our technology layer, where we've already modeled the infrastructure of our ski lift ERP system. So we have a node to define our ERP infrastructure, which is comprised of our PostgreSQL system software element, as well as a Windows application server, which is modeled here as a device. And then this infrastructure is realizing the ERP application component directly here at the application layer. So that's the as-is. So it's quite a simple model here, but it's just showing you the cross-layer relations as well from business, application, and technology directly in one model. But we know as the project manager that we're responsible for introducing a new dynamic pricing capability to the ski resort, and we want to see where we have some potential for digitalization. So now we're going to move back to our motivation model to see the motivation and strategy behind the new capability and to see how their ski resorts came to their decision to introduce some new business capabilities for an online presence. So here in our motivation model, again, just let it open up. So here we have our motivation model. So this is more from a strategic perspective. So to define the motivation model, the ski resort did some analysis on some of the other local ski areas and on current behavior trends of the customers and the holiday makers. They found that there are a lot of alternative offers available and that people are now changing their leisure time, changing their kind of habits and their behavior around how they approach their holiday time. So therefore competition in really attracting people to the resorts was quite high. So here at the top of the model we've used the results of the analysis to model our drivers for change. So here we've got two drivers indicated by this little almost like a wheel of a boat. And so we've got our alternative offers and our change leisure behavior. So the drivers then need to be assessed in more detail, and the results were that people were inclined to take cheaper buses and trains and then travel further distances to actually get to the other ski resorts. And they also found that there were a lot of other ski resorts offering more low-cost offers to attract the customers. So the management of the ski resort then defined a new goal here to try and attract more customers to the resort and to increase the number of people skiing. So we've got a goal here to increase the footfall, especially on weekdays, which is more of the kind of off-peak time that we have at the ski resort. So from this goal then they've defined two new requirements. One is to offer the dynamic pricing based on current weather information. So basically if we just like if the weather is nice, there's no reduction in the ticket prices, and if we know in advance that the weather is going to be poor, so it's going to be cloudy or there's going to be some precipitation, then the prices are reduced. So we can just describe our requirement here in the notebook. So we need to check 1 to 3 days in advance. The tickets can be purchased also via a smartphone, so we're going to have a kind of a website or an online way just through a typical website, but also to be accessed via a smartphone. And then depending on the weather, a 40% reduction if it's going to be raining or snowing. And if it's just going to be cloudy, then we reduce the tickets only by 15%. So that's our requirement that needs to be implemented in the architecture. So the second one was also to then combine offers with lift tickets and transport. So to maybe combine a bus and a lift ticket to try and be more attractive to these people who are interested in traveling more longer distance. But in today's example, we're just going to look at the impact of the introduction of the dynamic pricing and to see what impact that will have on our as-is architecture. So to do that, we can just make a copy here of our as-is architecture, and we'll now call it a 2B architecture. So it'll create a new version of our model. And to begin, we can now model and see what our planned solution architecture changes will be. So in the strategy and motivation layer, we can add our goal and our requirements. So we can actually copy our objects directly from our motivation model and paste them in here to our 2B architecture model. So again, we can reuse the objects. It gives you the option to create new objects, but we want to reuse them here, so it's the same objects that we're using. And the next step then will be to introduce some new capabilities. So we need 2 capabilities. One is our online ticket sales, so we can add it here into business architecture layer. And the second one will be dynamic pricing. So we can just call it, okay. Okay, so we've got online ticket sales and our dynamic pricing capability. And we'll say with the relation, so we can use our magic relation here, that the online ticket sales is comprised of our dynamic pricing capability. So the next step then will be to make some changes to our process architecture. So we have already our lift ticket sales process, but we'll now want to include our 2 processes to be able to select a ticket online. Firstly, select a ticket online, and then to actually buy a ticket online. So we need 2 additional processes here. Okay. Okay, 1 process, and rename our second process object. Okay, and then we just need to change where the text is here on our original process, so the lift ticket sales, just so we can still read here what the actual process is. So we now have our 2 processes, and we don't need to change anything else because our equipment reservation remains the same, and we're still accessing the same data around ticket price as well as our customer information. Okay, and we just have 1 additional relation here to say that our lift ticket sales process is realizing our online ticket sales with the now 2 new processes that we've just introduced. So that's the only change required at the business architecture layer. We now need to look at our application layer to see what changes we need here. So we already have our ski lift ERP system, and we know that one of the modules that we aren't currently using in that is the ability to offer an online ticket shop. So we can add our new application. So we just need to find our application component object here in the modeling bar, and we can add a online shop. Okay, and the online shop is the ski ERP is a composition relation here. So the ERP application is composed of an online shop module, so it provides the online shop module. The dynamic pricing is going to be based on the weather information. So we also need to have some information coming from the weather service. So we can add a second application here called weather service, but this is not an application that we're going to own, so it's going to be an external application. So we can also document that here in the classification chapter. We can mark it as an external application component, and maybe just to highlight the fact that it is an external application component, we can just mark it with a different color. So we can save our changes here and close the notebook. And for the online shop to get access to the weather service information, we need an interface here. So we can have an interface between the weather service and our online shop. So just some web service interface here, and we can just see that the weather service application is composed again of the web interface, and the web services then just create the relation serving our online shop with that information about the weather service. So all of the decisions around the pricing will be made here in the online shop based on the current weather forecast that we have. So that's our application layer on one side, providing the online access to our ticket sales, but we also need the ability to be able to buy our tickets using a smartphone. So again, we've got the technology layer, but underneath that we have our physical layer. So we need a physical layer to show, not using a node, I'm just going to scroll down here. We've got our device element here which we'll use to model the smartphone. And we're also just going to need some additional applications to model for the ski lift app that can then be used to serve the smartphone application or the smartphone device with the ability to purchase the tickets online and get the information on what discounts are available based on the weather. So, okay, so our ski lift ticket app here. And in order for the ski lift app to link into our ERP system, we also need an interface in between as well. So we can just model that here using our interface. Obviously another way too, you can decide to use either the shapes you see here, or we can model it just directly as the icon that you see in the top right corner of every element. But ERP, okay, and we just finished the relations here in between. So similarly, it's composed of the interface, and the interface is serving the app. And the final relation we need is from our ski lift app to our smartphone here. Again, it's a serving relation. So that completes the 2B architecture that we need. So we can see here that there's some additional elements now added in comparison to the as-is architecture. But we can also say that our dynamic pricing now is serving this requirement, or it's realizing this requirement, sorry, and if we just update our relations in the model, we can see what we have. Okay, that's fine. So just then to see what difference our 2B architecture looks compared to our as-is architecture, we can just do a comparison here of the two models. So we can select the models here in the Explorer, right-click and do a comparison view. So you can see now between the two models, we just zoom out a little bit, what the differences are. So you can see that we've added our goal and requirement here on the strategy and motivation layer. We can see our two new capabilities. We can see the additional business processes that were added. And then for our online shop, we have an online shop with information coming from the weather service through an interface. And likewise here, we can see our ski lift app is serving our smartphone using the ERP to ski app interface as well. So if anything was changed or removed, we would also have it color coded here. Anything added is added in green, anything removed will be visualized with a red icon, and if any attribute values changed, they will be highlighted in yellow or in kind of a yellowy orange color. But everything is also available here in a tabular form that can then be exported for further analysis. So that then just coming back to our slides, and we can also see, if we just look at the digital transformation steps, so what we did was looking at the as-is architecture that was available to begin with. We used our motivation model to see what drivers and what SWOT analysis was done based on the drivers that were identified. And then based on the SWOT analysis, we decided whether it was an opportunity or if it was going to be maybe a threat on the architecture. You can then, based on the assessments, define the actual goals that you want to achieve, and as a result of the goals you can then drill down and define the requirements that you want to implement. So we saw we wanted to introduce a new dynamic pricing capability, and then made the changes here in the 2B architecture to think about what assets you had to actually consider in the transformation. So we had some new capabilities, some new business processes, and obviously we needed some new applications and interfaces to also get the weather information to be able to offer the pricing to our customers. So that's just a simple example that I wanted to show, moving through the various layers of ArchiMate, the various layers of the architecture, of the framework, and to see how they relate together at the end. So if you want to begin your kind of digital transformation journey together using either Adonis for process management or AdoIT, as we've seen today, we offer a 30-day free trial of both, so you can sign up for a 30-day free trial here on our website. But with AdoIT, as you saw, we've got targeted analysis for the various processes and organizational areas that are going to be impacted with the result of any change you would like to have. And we can analyze the effects. We've got release workflow built in as well to actually control the use of the artifacts by the various stakeholders involved in your team. So yeah, we can have one released and one read-only or one draft version of an artifact directly in AdoIT, which helps to from the governance perspective. And we also have traceability of the digital transformation using the graphical and tabular model comparison that we just saw as well. But with the release workflow, there's also a detailed change history, so you can really see how and why your artifacts change over time as well. And yeah, if you want to start your digital transformation, you can work together with BOC, so no matter what the task or the project is, we can look to use your existing EA to derive digitalization potential. We can apply our procedure model to assist you with a step-by-step implementation. So we can support you with more than 20 years of consulting experience built up across the group. So if you're interested, feel free to get in contact with us. If you want a more kind of detailed demonstration of either AdoIT or Adonis, or especially now the new ArchiMate support in AdoIT, please feel free to contact us today. So that brings me to the end of my part of today's webinar. I hope that gave you just a taste of what we're now offering in terms of ArchiMate support. As I said, we support the full framework, but should you take some time and really see what, you should take some time and see what kind of parts of the standard are right for you based on your kind of architecture maturity, and then just take it step by step as you develop it. But just going to say thanks again from my side And I'm going to pass you back now to Lara, who will wrap up today's session for us. So thanks again, Lara.
Thank you, Tom. We will now take a quick look at the upcoming events. Our next webinar, AdoIT 8.5 Unboxed, Discover the new EA Suite, will take place on 11th October. This webinar will be focused on the new features of the last version of our EA Suite, AdoIT. Don't forget that a variety of useful articles and webinar recordings are also waiting for you in our online library. For example, the Digital Advantage, How to Manage Digital Transformation with PPM and EA, Getting Started with EA, or Getting Started with PPM, among others. Well, then I would like to close today's webinar. We will gladly answer the open questions by email in the coming days. I'm happy to see that so many people took part today and hope that we could meet your expectations for today's webinar. Do not forget to subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about free events and interesting news. It would give us a great pleasure to receive your feedback on this webinar. You will receive an email from us in the coming days asking for your opinion. On behalf of Tom and I, we wish you all a pleasant day.